I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court for its unanimous decision today. It was a very important decision. We're very well crafted, and I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together.
Breaking now, the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled that Colorado cannot disqualify former President Donald Trump from the ballot under the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause. It's an historic ruling that preserves Trump's ability to seek a second term. The court ruled that Congress, not the states, has the exclusive authority to enforce the 14th Amendment that would disqualify federal candidates. And I quote, "Because the Constitution makes Congress, rather than the states, responsible for enforcing Section 3 against federal office holders and candidates, we reverse." That's according to the unsigned opinion from the court in its unanimous ruling. Joining me now with the reaction is the Hill's Mychael Schnell. Mychael, does this settle the January 6th issue for this cycle?
Hey, Kevin. Well, I mean, it settles one part of it, right? This was trying to argue that former President Trump should not be on the ballot in Colorado. Other states arguing as well, saying that he went against the 14th Amendment, which bars individuals from holding office if they have committed an insurrection. Of course, that going back to the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. As we know very well, this was only one of the legal challenges, legal proceedings surrounding Trump that had to do with January 6th. There's still Jack Smith's investigation into the federal investigation of his involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot and effort to subvert the election results. And then there's that case over in Georgia, which is right now being led by Fani Willis, but that could change based on the current proceedings we're seeing right now, with some folks raising concerns about her leading that. So all that goes to say, Kevin, is that one part of the January 6th challenges facing Trump is over right now, but there is still plenty more to come.
But this is a big one. I mean, for the Supreme Court essentially to say to any states who are trying to kick Trump off the ballot, it's going to be a really big uphill battle, especially if they can't do it anymore around January 6th as a result of that unanimous decision and the ruling. How has President Biden and his political orbit reacted to the news?
Yeah, we're still seeing some early reaction right now. Obviously, this news just breaking this morning, but Quentin Fulks, who's the principal deputy campaign manager for President Biden's campaign, the Biden-Harris 2024, told Jen Psaki, now with MSNBC, but of course formerly at the White House, quote, "We don't really care about the decision," reiterating that that was not how the campaign had planned to beat Trump. And this has sort of been the message from the Biden campaign all along, saying that they didn't really care what would happen with his legal challenge. We're going to beat him at the ballot box anyway. Right now, it looks like it will be that rematch between Biden and Trump. Biden confident with his chances, considering he beat the former president 4 years ago. But obviously, we are in a completely different political environment right now. Different issues dominating. The president is 4 years older, which is a prime concern among voters. So it'll be fascinating to see how November shakes out. Right now, though, Biden campaign saying this is status quo. We'll beat him at the ballot box.
I'm interested to see how this plays in Colorado, because the Supreme Court, this was a clear rebuke of the Colorado State Supreme Court. And obviously, Colorado is a battleground state. So how this plays and whether or not this has a mobilizing effect on Republicans and Trump supporters in the state of Colorado, that's really one of the threads that I'm going to be watching on election night. 6 months from now, Schnell, but who's counting? Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley might be counting. She is facing growing speculation about whether she's going to continue her presidential run through no labels. Now, when I spoke to the head of No Labels, Joe Cunningham, a few weeks ago, he essentially told me that he was open and interested in Haley or someone like her. Here he is. But Nikki Haley specifically, because that's the biggest unknown right now. She's staying in this race. Would she be a strong No Labels ticket at the top or vice president?
You know, Senator Lieberman extended warm wishes and accolades to Nikki Haley. I applaud anybody who's jumping in the race to give America options.
But over the weekend, Haley reiterated that she is a Republican and that she thinks it'd be difficult for her to run through No Labels because it means that she would have to bring on a Democrat on the unity ticket. The whole point of it is that they're a unity ticket. So that would be an obstacle for her, Schnell. Now, there are other possibilities and anything can happen, especially this cycle. So she could get a Democrat to run with her who comes from the business sector, for example, or she could recruit someone cut from the same cloth as former Senator Joe Lieberman. Of course, he's a founder behind behind the No Labels movement. And he actually has frequently caucused with Democrats, but he was also someone who the late Senator John McCain wanted as a running mate, but his team ended up picking Sarah Palin. So I say all of that, Schnell, because it kind of feels like Haley's floating that she might stick around after Super Tuesday through another mechanism. What's your read?
I mean, it's entirely possible, but look, we've seen the history of third-party campaigns, Kevin. They just don't work. The U.S. political system is not built for more than two parties. We live in a two-party system. That's how it works. We saw in 2016, Jill Stein peeled off support from Hillary Clinton, which led in part to Donald Trump's victory right there. Third-party candidacies just don't work in the U.S. So if Nikki Haley were to launch that, it could be for her messaging brand and saying that there needs to be an alternative conservative on the ticket available to voters come November. But that could really shake things up because we have seen her pick up significant support in early states. Look, not as much as Donald Trump, but there has been some support there. I think that could also raise some concern for the Biden campaign because there are a number of Democrats who have expressed keen concerns about President Biden's age. That has been something, and Nikki Haley has been sort of trying to position herself as more moderate than Donald Trump in a lot of ways in some areas, giving less of that isolationist idea on foreign policy, but more looking into alliances on the world stage. So maybe some Democrats could like that the message that she's providing and giving out that could then shave off support from Biden. It could also go the other way with Trump as well. It could really shake up the race. But at the end of the day, I mean, Nikki Haley running as a third party is not going to get the support that it needs to win the presidential election. So she'd likely just be a spoiler.
It's definitely going to have an impact, though, and it's definitely going to disrupt. So No Labels will definitely disrupt. So in that sense, their window is they're definitely going to make an impact. And my Trump sources tell me there are certain states in particular where they feel, like Arizona, for example, that a unity ticket would absolutely hurt Trump. And then in other states, it would hurt Biden. So they would definitely have an impact. And she got her first win in Washington, D.C.'s GOP primary. So I guess the district wants Nikki Haley. So what are you going to be watching for in Super Tuesday, Schnell?
Taking an eye on how much support can Nikki Haley get, right? We're not expecting her to win any of these states, but she's got to make the case to voters that she deserves to stay in the race. More than voters, Kevin, she's got to make the case to donors that she has a reason to be remaining in the race, that she can continue to rake in this cash and continue to stump on the campaign trail. She's said multiple times that she does not plan on tapping out of the race until all voters have made their way to the ballot box, ensuring that Republicans have their opportunity for a choice when they go to cast that ballot. But look, if she doesn't bring in sizable support, and I'm not saying that I'm expecting her to beat Trump in any of these states, but she's got to bring in a fair amount of support to make the case to voters and donors that she deserves to be in this race, that she still has a pocket of support in the Republican conference. And it's going to be needed for her messaging that Republicans are sick and tired of Donald Trump and they want to take the Republican Party in a new direction.
And she's going to have a lot of voter data for about 27 to 40% of battleground states, like in, Virginia, a state that both sides would like to win. Thursday, State of the Union. I think one of the key things that I'm going to be watching for in State of the Union is the Israel-Hamas war. And I would anticipate that President Biden is going to speak very clearly about the need for there to be a ceasefire. We heard that over the weekend from Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yeah, the State of the Union is going to be a very important address Thursday night at the Capitol, 9 p.m. start time. And a lot of folks are going to be watching to see, how the president performs. This is seen by many folks as a springboard to the general election as we can make our way through the primary season. Of course, there's been no shortage of coverage of concerns that voters have about President Biden's age. So I think a lot of folks are going to be watching to see what he says, but also how he delivers his message to the country. And then you talk about the specific issues. I definitely think we're going to be seeing a lot about the Israel-Hamas war. This is something that the president has been really sharply criticized about from progressives who say that it is time for a ceasefire. We saw Vice President Kamala Harris say that over the weekend. President Biden is going to be very clear on his message, particularly when it comes to progressives. We saw that undeclared vote in Michigan get a sizable amount of support. That should be a concern for the president. He's going to have to really hone in on his message on the Israel-Hamas war. Second thing, Kevin, immigration. We've seen Poll after poll say that this is the top issue. It's the issue this cycle. The president is going to be threading a very fine needle when he talks to the American voters on Thursday. He's going to have to lean into the issue of immigration, but not so much to frustrate some of those progressives who do not want to see aggressive border security policy and immigration policy.
Something tells me that those crowd shots of all the different lawmakers when he's talking about immigration might go viral. Meanwhile, things are heating up for the race to replace Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. GOP Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, he said that he wants Trump to stay out of the race for the replacement for McConnell, but something tells me, Schnell, that I don't think Trump's gonna take that advice.
I don't think he's going to heed that advice, Kevin. Trump loves to get involved with and comment on different matters that are happening up on Capitol Hill, both leadership races and legislation. In terms of legislation, we saw him weigh in on the debt limit last year. Earlier this year, we saw him weigh in on that bipartisan border security agreement that was crafted by 3 senators in the upper chamber. On leadership races, we saw him weighed in a number of times when it came to the speaker's race. Following Kevin McCarthy's ouster in October, he shot down Tom Emmer's candidacy. He endorsed Jim Jordan's candidacy. I expect we're going to see the same thing here when we talk about the Senate. One reason why is because it's a big deal. This is the first time in nearly 20 years that the Senate Republican Conference is going to have a new top dog leading them. And President Trump wants to try to get his MAGA America First perspective to be at the top of the conference and steer the conference at a time when A, they can have control of the Senate. It's looking increasingly likely next year. And B, they could potentially have him back in the White House. So, Mark Wayne Mullen may want Trump to stay out of the race. Mark Wayne is supporting John Thune in the race, who's had his run-ins with the former president recently. So that could be one reason why he wants the former president to sort of stay on the sidelines with this battle. But Kevin, I think most people think that is highly, highly, highly unlikely to happen.
All right, the Hill's Mychael Schnell. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
President Biden authorized U.S. military cargo planes to airdrop food in Gaza over the weekend as part of the U.S. effort to address the humanitarian crisis in the Israel-Hamas war. More than 100 Palestinians were killed in a crowd that had flocked to get the food. The planes dropped an estimated 38,000 meals in southwest Gaza, and the U.S. coordinated with Royal Jordanian Air Force. Biden posted on social media that while the aid was flowing to Gaza is not nearly enough, we will continue to pull out every stop we can to get more aid in. More aid is expected in the coming days.
Given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire.
Vice President Kamala Harris called for an immediate ceasefire over the weekend while speaking in Alabama to commemorate the anniversary of Bloody Sunday. President Biden had been pushing for a short-term 6-week ceasefire in the region, but that plan fell apart. Israel has said that they would be open to a ceasefire provided that Hamas released all of the hostages. Harris's remarks come just days ahead of President Biden's State of the Union address, where the Israel-Hamas war will no doubt be a key portion of the remarks. And the Jerusalem Post is reporting that Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz has landed in Washington, D.C. to meet with Harris and Secretary of State Jake Sullivan this week. Gantz is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's top political opponent who had joined Netanyahu's coalition government. Gantz's arrival in Washington this week has sparked criticism from Netanyahu loyalists. Netanyahu has frequently received criticism recently between President Biden and Democrats. CVS and Walgreens will begin selling abortion drugs, including mifepristone, later this month. The White House is applauding the decision, and President Biden called it an important milestone. Mifepristone is one of 2 drugs used in medication abortion, which according to Reuters accounts for more than half of U.S. abortions. FDA officials approved the use of the drug in 2000, but conservative groups are challenging the drug's approval. The Supreme Court will begin hearing oral arguments in the case later this month, and should SCOTUS rule in favor with the conservative groups, it's possible that CVS and Walgreens would have to change their policies. Legal scholars are anticipating a decision sometime this summer, just as the campaigns intensify ahead of the November elections. The largest wildfire in Texas history rages on and has now crossed the state line into Oklahoma. Cooler air is expected to arrive this week in Texas, which could give firefighters their best chance yet at containing the fire. In just 1 week, the fire has leveled more than 1 million acres and killed at least 2 people. As of Monday, the fire is only 15% contained. Change Healthcare patients and doctors are still paying more for their medicine after a cyber attack last week. Parent company United Health says that the ransom has only impacted Change Healthcare systems. But the American Hospital Association says hospitals across the country are having issues processing claims, billing patients, and even paying workers and buying supplies. United Health says ransomware group Black Cat is behind the attack, and now the FBI is warning healthcare providers of an increase in Black Cat ransomware attacks. Dune Part 2 dusts off a slow start at the box office this year with a massive $81.5 million opening box office weekend. The sci-fi blockbuster franchise starring Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya is the biggest box office debut since Barbie. But what is perhaps even more interesting is that science has found that humans might actually be able to live on a desert-like planet like the one in Dune, Arrakis. A group from the University of Bristol created a climate simulation, and despite the desert heat and massive sandstorms, humans could in theory have a chance at surviving on a Dune-like planet, minus the giant space worms. All I have to say is, given the opportunity, not sure if I would be a fan visiting a planet that's all sand. I am a beach guy though, so I do like an ocean, but maybe add some water. And I hear NASA is actually trying to figure out how to unlock some of those below the surface bodies of water on other moons like in Jupiter, or maybe even our moon, or maybe even Mars. That's it for today's Daily Debrief. I would go to space as long as I can come back too. That is it for today's Daily Debrief. My name is Kevin Cirilli. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.